Colonel Ian C. Fletcher, welcome to the 2nd Air Naval Gunfire Liaison Company changing command ceremony, where Lieutenant Colonel Daniel C. Kovac will relinquish command to Lieutenant Colonel Michael E. Bruce. The changing command ceremony is a solemn and honored tradition from the rich heritage of our Corps. Please rise for the invocation given by Command Chaplain Jeffrey Peterson, United States Navy Chaplain Corps, and remain standing for the playing of the national anthem.
Let us pray. Dear Almighty God in heaven, holy is your name. Thank you for life, for freedom, for love, and grace that we might stand before you today. I ask that you bless and your blessings continue upon the Air Naval Gunfire Liaison Company as it is handed over. This peaceful exchange of command reminds us of the freedom that we have as Americans, a freedom that you have provided and sustained through 250 years, and those who are willing to fight and defend that freedom and democracy around the world. Lord, I thank you for the faithful service of Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Kovac during his time as commanding officer, and for his steadfast leadership through times of peace and conflict. I pray that you will continue to bless him in the days and years ahead as he moves on to the next evolution in career and life. Lord, I also ask that you guide Lieutenant Colonel Michael Bruce as he assumes command today. Bless him and his family as they seek to be an inspiration to the Marines under his charge. Strengthen, encourage, empower with strength and grace and wisdom so that he might always be faithful and command with honor, courage, and commitment. Finally, Lord, I ask that you will empower us all, that this ceremony will not just be another event on the calendar, but a benchmark for excellence for us to follow as we seek to be all that you have called us to be and all that our country needs us to be, and to always be faithful as you are always faithful. In your holy and anointed name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Now taking his position in the reviewing area is the 2nd ANGLICO Commanding Officer, Lieutenant Colonel Daniel C. Kovac. Lieutenant Colonel Michael E. Bruce will now assume his position in the reviewing area. At this time, the Sergeant Major will deliver the colors to the commanding officer. Ladies and gentlemen, we now come to the ceremony's most solemn moment, the actual passing of command. The battle colors of a Marine Corps unit symbolize the authority and accountability of command. Transferring the colors during the ceremony symbolizes the relinquishing of command by Lieutenant Colonel Kovac, and by accepting the colors, Lieutenant Colonel Bruce accepts command and confirms his total commitment to the Marines and sailors that he will command. Sergeant Major Bustos is delivering the colors to the commanding officer. From Commandant of the Marine Corps to Lieutenant Colonel Daniel T. Kovac. Subject, relinquishment of command. Effective 11 June 2026, you will relinquish command of the 2nd Air Naval Gunfire Liaison Company. Signed, Eric N. Smith, General, United States Marine Corps, Commandant of the Marine Corps. From Commandant of the Marine Corps to Lieutenant Colonel Michael E. Bruce. Subject, assumption of command. Effective 11 June 2026, you will assume command of the 2nd Air Naval Gunfire Liaison Company. Signed, Eric N. Smith, General, United States Marine Corps, Commandant of the Marine Corps. Ladies and gentlemen, the commanding officer of 2 Marine Expeditionary Force Information Group, Colonel Ian C. Fletcher.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
And the camera that's on us, thank you for that one. Hey, it's really a pleasure to be up here and presiding over this. As I was talking to 8th Com earlier, it's a unique privilege to be able to bring Dan into command and actually send him off to command and then bring Mike into command. This is pretty awesome. And it's really cool that it's AC. It's a little bit different than this morning, though being in Charlie's is very Anglican of you. Very formal. Anyways, family, friends, key MEF leadership, former MEF leadership, thank you for being here. It's great to see the 148 and 29 here, and also our rest of our French and NATO allies. Celebrating the lineage of probably one of the most important units within the MEF for closing the time-distance gap for crisis response, and that's 2nd Anglico. 2 years ago, I got to visit the former commander who's sitting back in the room out in Nordic Response and see what Anglico was to our European partners, our allies, how they integrated with Norway. Dan and I were out there kind of writing notes. I was already in command, he was ready to get to command. So when he assumed command, we chatted very briefly, and it's like, not being an Anglican, I'm gonna tell you to do something that's gonna make the Anglico tribe very uncomfortable. I'm gonna need you to change. I'm gonna need to elevate Anglico into more of like a cover term than anything, and become Multi-Domain Task Group 1. There's a reason why they became the first of several multi-domain task groups. Because Anglico was built, its heritage goes well back into true air naval gunfire liaisons, back when we actually fought with the fleet and had battleships and called in probably prop-driven aircraft. But the battle space had changed. And it was no longer the work of JTACs and providing fires to our Afghan partners or Iraqi partners. It was about creating digital interfaces, ensuring command and control with our allies who, in the scenarios we're getting ready for, were already in contact with a peer partner or a near peer threat. So we began to work through how do you change a formation that actually has a great lineage, great culture that provides capabilities that have been relevant across the U.S. and Joint Force and elevated into modern warfare. Well, it didn't happen with some bumps and bruises, but we learned a lot along the way. We studied what our allies were doing already in Europe. We learned a lot with how Anglico was designed to integrate and enable that force closure. And as we began to experiment more, we began to adapt to formations. Old terms went away and were replaced by NATO-compliant terms like RISTAs, Reconnaissance Surveillance Target Acquisition Troops, and STAs, Surveillance Target Acquisition Teams. That was a bit of a change, but it was now compliant with NATO StatAcs, and it started meaning something to our partners. And Dan had to weather that. My little good idea, he had to actually take that and bring it to bear. And I have to say, you did an amazing job doing it. Because where we're at today, while we have deep ties with the British Royal Marines and the armies, the commandos, And we have exceptionally deep ties with the Norwegians. We're forming new partnerships with the Finns, the Swedes, and ANGLICO is leading the way in enabling us as the MEF's advanced liaison capability to start bridging those gaps, both in relationships, and as you probably go over next door to the only truly approved bar within this headquarters, you'll see the depth of relationships, the cultural integration, and one of the most important pieces about this organization, its ability to connect cultures, bridge gaps, and create a common sense of purpose so we can bring fires and lethality to bear anywhere that this MEF is going to respond to. And that's a pretty high order. So you did an exceptional job in doing that. And Kate, you supported the hell out of them. I know you guys are already packed. I know the trailer's ready. I know, you're counting. So T- whatever, you're going to be, gas pedal down and driving north, probably with a little picture in the rearview mirror. But know that you're leaving Camp Lejeune, helping us pivot a legacy that I really say began a couple years ago, and then we just accelerated. So to you, that's a high mark that you're going to be taking. For those who don't know, I've actually known Lieutenant Colonel Bruce for a hot minute. He was one of my majors over in South Africa, one of my fires officers, and I took him on an adventure deep into Narnia, I would call it, which is East Africa, when he had the unique chance of, hey, we got to do a thing, and I need you to figure out how to do that thing, and we have no idea what the model of that thing is. So figure out how to get ROE 001, Kinetic Strike Authority, pulled from the National Mission Force and delegated to the SOCAF commander at the time. And he kind of looked at me and was like, and? Like, there's some pubs, read on it, I'm busy, go figure it out. And he did. A few years later, I find out that he is coming to take over 2nd Anglico. And knowing what we've been working on, I truly, and people say this, and my wife likes to say, like, be honest during changes in command. Because we always like to say, you were purposely built for this, yada, yada. You truly are. You have the right background, mindset, and credibility to now take what Dan has created and elevate this into really the MEF's Advanced Force Operations Command. Bring that commando culture down to the deck plate leadership that is required. So Anglico does live on that red evergreen, is able to deploy 24, 48-hour notice in support of the Med as the Med becomes the initial force closure for the rest of the force. It's going to be hard. It's going to be exciting. And the cool thing is, I think everybody in this uniform is yours, except for him. So that means they're already above standard. Well played. So it is with my distinguished privilege, it's an honor, and it's kind of sad because it means the team's breaking up. But Dan, the floor is yours. Congratulations. You survived 24 months of one of the most wild rodeo rides ever, which is 2MEF and the MEF Information Group and being the advanced force for both. So congratulations. Thank you.
I'm not allowed to free gun this, so I've got a few notes. So first, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Thanks for being a part of this ceremony today and honoring the legacy of 2nd Anglico. We've got a lot of folks, and so it would be a miss on my part if I didn't acknowledge some folks in the room. So, Sir, Colonel Fletcher, Monica, ma'am, Sergeant Major, and your wife Sarah, ma'am, Colonel Kulo, welcome to the team. Thank you for giving us the space and the guidance to be able to go out and execute something that's pretty visionary and leading what is across the entire MAGTAF, across the entire Marine Corps and arguably the Joint Force, something very novel that's generating tempo and results. And that's going to lead to all of the things that we've talked about around the round table, the programming, the budgeting, the people, the equipment, the resources that we currently lack so that these warfighters can go out and execute that vision. So thank you. We've got a lot of colonels in the room, Colonel Emelser, Colonel Flea Martinez, former 2nd Anglico CO, Colonel Susi. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. It speaks a lot when you look in this. I know the room's not that big, but it is damn full. And that says a lot about you all, 2nd Anglicans, about your reputation and who you all can bring to a ceremony like this. So gentlemen, thank you for being here. It's awesome to see you. There's also some other folks that don't quite look like this, and 2 in particular have come a long way. So we've got some of our NATO allies. I talked about this 26 months ago when I took command, that was probably going to be the most strategic and the most meaningful and impactful part of my time in command, was forging that relationship. Our ability to gain access and to be able to enable those advanced force operations only matter if we have friends on the distant end that are welcoming us and receiving us, giving us the ability to maneuver, to operate, to get on the systems. But that takes trust. And in order to build that trust, you have to be in the layer with you, doing the hard stuff. In order to do that hard stuff, it required us to up our game, and we've acknowledged that. I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. So, gentlemen from the UK, thank you for making the trip across the pond. I'm truly honored that you're here. I greatly appreciate it. Major Catayo, guitar player extraordinaire from the Tumar Div, thanks for being here. And I know the other LNOs that aren't here wish that they could be, but thank you, gentlemen, for being here. It means a lot. Got some other teammates here that I think I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge. Colonel Fletcher talked about it a little bit. Coming into command, 2nd Anglico, I'd never, with a brief 2nd lieutenant, oopsies, have never been a part of an Anglico before. I had no experience and no background about what to expect, and so unlike any of my time in the traditional cannon artillery world, no other battalion or unit is like Anglico in the MiG. Because of that, there's a unique collegialness that's formed, because you're not really in competition, you're in cooperation with one another. So we've got all of the either outgoing, incoming, or soon-to-be outgoing commanders from the MiG team. Gentlemen, thanks one for being my friend and for always being able to have a conversation about how do we get to yes. We all understand the vision, and this really needs to be a team effort. From MSB helping out with Burmese Chase for record support, from 8th Com sending over absolute rock stars for both of those multi-domain task groups, for Intel and Radbin saying yes when your entire staffs were saying no. How do we get role players, direction finding, and go hunt our Marines to make all of us better, because iron sharpens iron? I greatly appreciate it. Could not have done it without you. Your command teams as well, the Sergeant's Major group chat. We'll keep it off the internet, but you all help keep each other grounded and work together in a pretty unique way, so thank you. Speaking of building cooperative teams, in the back row over here, we've got some of the human terrain team, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention them. So Dr. Donna, Miss Debbie, Miss Amanda, Miss Taylor, thank you for always having an open hatch and an open ear. We appreciate, and I think it's not lost on me, and you've heard me talk about it at formations before, that having those sorts of resources for our Marines truly generates warfighting capability. Because if we don't have the preventative medicine and the what's going on in the home front stuff or in the house dealt with, we've got problems. Because that means that they're not on the gun, they're not focused on the mission, and so you enable us to be able to go out and be the good partner or ally on the contact layer with those folks, so thank you. Talking about teammates, how did I get here? These 2 fine folks here up in the front row, my mom and dad. I know that there's been many a long night. You gave me the tools in my kit to get to this point. The hard work, the dedication, some would call it workaholism, but the grit and the determination to see complex problems through to their logical end, and to have the compassion and empathy to make sure that I'm pulling those up that are below me on the rungs up to see the grandeur that we're creating together. So thank you. And then next to them is my wife, Kate. You've been through thick and thin. You've lived this life as a PAO, now Comstrat Marine. Before getting out, you took some little bushy-eyed moto haircut captain and turned him into this suave, handsome in front of you. But thanks for sticking it out with me. I know it's not been easy. I know it's not been the greatest of rides. The Marine Corps has this knack. Anytime you think we're going somewhere, they say, think again. So hopefully this time we'll get to stay in DC for a little bit and provide some stability. But thanks for being there, understanding, hey, meal's ready, I'm available to talk if you want to, or I'll just sit and listen if you need. So thank you. Love you. All right, to the rest of us that are looking suave, non multa sed multum. That's our Latin motto. Not many, but much. You all, and I was chuckling earlier today at Lieutenant Colonel Henderson's change of command ceremony when he boastfully showed a representative formation, which is about triple of what I have on any given day, or had on any given day. 1,300 Marines and sailors, he said, is what his staffing goal, his strength has averaged. We're lucky if we have 100 souls any given day. All of the stuff that Colonel Fletcher talked about, you all accomplished in spades. A list of some of those things. The internal force redesign. We reinvigorated the jump mission. We created from the bones of ANGLICO basic course and ANGLICO qualification course that included advanced medical training, Marine advisor course, so that there was someone who could give you a check ride before you went out to our allies to make sure that you understand how to work in politically sensitive or dynamic environments instead of figuring it out on the job. We did an ANGLICO fitness assessment, pulled standards from our NATO allies and across the Joint Force and Special Operations community. We rewrote the TNR standards. We did 2 multi-domain task groups. And we did all of that over the past 26 months, 30 plus OAIs in a dozen plus different countries, not to mention all of the planning conferences. In addition to all of that stuff, you all were able to continue the normal stuff like FASMO inspections, CGRIs, one of the highest medical readiness sustained percentages across the MEF over that period. And you did that with 100 Marines and sailors while still maintaining your proficiency, your height weight, your PFT, your CFT, and all of the other stuff that the Marine Corps says we need to fit into a compressed timeline. My hat's off to you. I know that this change has not been easy. When Colonel Fletcher brought us in and talked about his vision, shortly thereafter, I was introduced to a Master Gunnery Sergeant who told me about the 3 types of changes that exist. One of them is incremental. The other is transformational, and the last is disruptive. As soon as the D in disruptive left his lips, I knew which one we needed. And in order to make disruptive change, you have to be disruptive. I was disruptive intentionally. I asked more of you intentionally because we realized that the standards that the Marine Corps sets weren't good enough. Those were just the entry argument for what success looked like. Where the real standard was set by the theater. And so the commando standard, when we work with them, is what we have to achieve. Not just achieve, but exceed. When we're in Norway working with them, the hikes that we do are based off of their standard load and their standard distance. Why? Because it builds that trust and that relationship and that credibility with our allies and partners. It also lowers the risk so that they understand that when we show up, that we've got the goods and we can hang, that they can employ us to the full extent of how they need their scheme of maneuver supported. So thanks for going on that rodeo with me. In addition to this disruptive change that we've created and the standards that we've implemented, we've done that with a lot of turnover. For those that aren't tracking, in the 26 months in command, I've had 4 different XOs, 3 different operations officers, 3 different communications officers, a gapped operations chief, and 3 different communications chiefs, just to name a few. So we've been able to inculcate that change in 26 months, despite the manpower turnover, the gaps in the 086 and 0871 communities. That's incredible. I still stand up here sometimes and kind of blink, like, how the hell did we pull that off? But it's the hard work that you all put in. So I cannot thank you enough for that. Speaking of thanks, Sergeant Major, fantastic job on this ceremony. Thanks for coming over, having a great attitude, being humble and willing to learn. And to your lovely bride, thanks for taking such an active role in trying to make sure that the rest of the families at the home front were involved in this process. I think the key volunteer network grew from 1 to like 8 within the span of a couple of weeks, and that's no shortage because of your work and effort. So thank you, and please sustain that. All right, almost done. Marines, I challenged you all from the very start that you're either ready or you have to get ready. As a crisis response force for the MEF, they expect us to be ready. And so if you have to get ready, you're not meeting the standard. That's things like medical readiness, that's things like annual training, that's things like gear inspections, CMR layouts, physical fitness, you name it. So my last request of you now that Lieutenant Colonel Bruce has taken the stick is stay ready, because the nation's going to call at some point. And lastly, to Mike, welcome aboard, brother. Like, what an awesome turnover we've had. I'm really excited about what this place holds for you in the future and how you're going to be able to put your fingerprints on it and get some of these things across the goal line. There's no shortage of work that's still left to be done. To your family, welcome. I'm so glad you could be a part of the ceremony today. This is a really special time for Mike, and it's really meaningful that you guys could be here. If I may, with your permission, Lightning 6, if your niece and nephew would come up real quick. Delilah and Tristan. I wanted to say welcome to the ANGLICO family. So hopefully that was all right. Anyway, Mike, they're ready. And I know you're going to do great things. So best of luck to you.
I brought Cliff Notes as well because I realized that I'm the only thing standing between all of you and the beer. Lots of beer and food that sits in Opie Lightning over there. So I'll keep this quick, knowing that I'm the new guy that nobody actually wants to hear listen. But Sir, Sergeant Major, Colonel Kula, thank you for being here. Thank you for overseeing this. The kind words, sir, that I know mean a lot. They mean a lot to me. To the commanders, sergeants majors, senior leaders that are here, thank you. I know these take up time from everybody, so thank you for being here, taking time out of your day. To my family, thanks for being here. I wouldn't be here without you guys. Haven't had this group together since I graduated TBS, and there's two editions, so it's pretty cool. Dan, the image you set for me over 2 years ago really makes me feel like I'm ready for this, so thank you for everything. I got a whole bunch of friends that are here, whether they're friends from TBS and Fort Sill graduation or friends I served with in other continents. It's humbling and it's awesome to have people like that will continue to come out and see you. Sergeant Major, Hope, Kate, thank you, and the rest of the team, thank you for putting this on. Thank you for the ceremony, what we're going to go do over here, and just everything, because this stuff doesn't happen without that back support. Dan, yeah, man, it's this turnover I told you the other day was probably the best turnover I can imagine for. I don't know if anyone actually feels prepared when they're standing up here and realize they actually have to come talk, but I'm about as ready as I think I can be. And sir, a year ago, I saw you at the May conference in California, and you asked me, knowing I was on the board, is second Anglico the #1 on your list? I told the Marines and sailors, the team at the staff call yesterday, this was my first choice. This is where I wanted to come to. I'm super humbled and excited to be here. Thank you all for coming. Tom Fidelis.
Flowers are now being delivered to Mrs. Kate Kovac, Mrs. Caroline Kovac, Mrs. Robin Lejeune, and Mrs. Barbara Bruce. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the playing of Anchors Away and the singing of the Marine Band. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the change of command ceremony. Lieutenant Colonel Kovac and Lieutenant Colonel Bruce would like to extend an invitation to join them at Opie Lighting for a reception. Thank you for attending today's ceremony.